This is Michael Popok, and it must be Legal AF After Dark. MAGA Congress has finally woken up and decided maybe they should try to pass a resolution to completely invalidate all several years of work by the Jan6 Committee. And make sure everybody knows that what happened on Jan 6, which was the attack of our Capitol by insurrectionists, wasn't an insurrection at all. It was just a tour that had gone slightly awry or something like that. And the Capitol is not the temple of our democracy. That's partisan words. And we should be able to vacate the contempt proceedings and vacate the subpoenas. And maybe Steve Bannon doesn't have to really go to jail in July. Or does he? We break it all down for you with this new crazy resolution by MAGA Congress. One place on the dial. Legal AF on the MeidasTouch network. Take a listen. Firstly, let's talk about what Burleson, Massey, and Biggs are trying to do, obviously at Donald Trump's command, in order to try to overturn the entire findings of the Jan 6 Committee and vacate their subpoenas and therefore, I guess, attempt to do something towards the contempt findings. Now, look, a bunch of people got subpoenas. The vast majority of people complied with their subpoena to both provide documents and to testify to the committee. None of the MAGA Congress people, who were all part of the Trump attempt to overturn democracy at various stages, and whether it was involvement with the fake electors like Andy Biggs, or opening the door and letting some of them in a few days early to let the Jan 6ers case the joint, or any of that stuff. And so, the Jan 6 Committee wanted to get to the bottom of the rumors and the theory that it was an inside job in a way. None of the MAGA Congress testified, and all ignored their subpoenas. Now, because of various traditions and norms within Congress, they didn't refer them to the Department of Justice. So Andy Biggs got away scot-free, so to speak. But the others, Meadows, Scavino, Bannon, Navarro is in jail right now. I mean, there's not much you can do for that guy. They're not going to, withdraw. What are they going to do? Withdraw the subpoena, and somebody's going to move to vacate his sentence and commute it and whatever. He's wrapping it up in Miami. Donald Trump's one of his primary visitors. Pick up the phone. Put your hand on the glass. That's what they're doing. And Bannon's about to do that too. He's about to go. He looks like he's like loving it because he's with Trump like in campaign rallies, and he's going to be the podcaster in jail in chief and heading into jail. So, what did you make of this resolution, and then which is never going to pass, and if it passes, it'll never be turned into a law? But what do you think it says for future congressional investigations, whether you like that Congress or not, and its power of the subpoena?
I mean, that resolution, it wants to call the Jan 6 Select Committee, illegitimate. And in addition to the subpoenas, they want to basically dismantle anything that existed from the Jan 6 Committee. And it's interesting because I thought a lot about this, thinking, okay, let's say they did get it to pass, and let's say they essentially, let's back up a minute. So Congress has the power to subpoena someone to appear before them, and the Jan 6 Select Committee had that authority, and so they subpoenaed various people who came in and testified before them. And as you pointed out, there were several who refused. And what Congress then does is they decide whether or not to make a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. And only the Department of Justice gets to decide whether or not there's enough evidence to bring criminal charges or not. So Mark Meadows, for example, who partially complied with the subpoena, but not fully complied, I should say. I think he gave some documents over, but maybe he didn't want to testify. There was some, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a partial compliance. The Department of Justice decided not to prosecute him because prosecutors won't bring cases that they don't think they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So there, I think the partial compliance made them pause. However, with, as you pointed out, Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon, who basically gave them the finger and said, we're not complying at all. The Department of Justice decided to prosecute those, and they were both convicted. And so that's what's going on. I also read that Steve Bannon was hoping to serve his time in one of these camps, that are notoriously much nicer and easier than some of the other federal prisoners, or prisons, I should say. And these camps are where some of the white collar people go. And I heard that he's not eligible for a camp because he has
Prior.
he has, yeah, exactly. He has a pending criminal state case here in New York. So
we used to call those back in the day, although people, only our generation will know what I'm referencing. You will. They used to call those Club Fed.
Yes, exactly.
Because there used to be are Club Med still around?
Yes.
I'll ask that for the are they around still?
Yeah, yeah, Club Med's still around.
Club Med.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, so what would happen if they passed this resolution that made these subpoenas, kind of nullified the subpoenas, made them no longer existing? Would that matter to the prosecution? I don't think it does. I think the prosecution stands alone because it was a valid subpoena at the time. They refused at the time. You can call it back after the fact, even though it will never pass, like you said. But in my head, I just was going through the mental exercise of what that would be like. I don't think it does. And I analogize to a crime, resisting arrest, which is a crime in New York where if somebody physically resists arrest, just refuses to be arrested and then physically maneuvers their body in such a way that they are trying to either get away or refuse to, move their hands away to be handcuffed, that kind of thing. Resisting arrest, if you prosecute someone for resisting arrest, and often prosecutors do that, like when there's the police get injured or something like that, that when it's really egregious, that's when they usually prosecute those. And if you prosecute someone for resisting arrest, but the arrest is either like say they were being arrested for some other crime, and that crime, it turns out they weren't guilty of, for whatever reason, there wasn't enough evidence, or they prosecutors decided not to bring that charge, or if the arrest itself was somehow, like I said, the case went away, the resisting still stands. So to me, this is sort of similar, but who knows? I don't know how anything works, but I think the case would still stand.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is all show theater. This is all kabuki theater for Donald Trump, so he can have something to talk about on the campaign trail when he tries to string two sentences together. And it just shows me the depravity and the moral hollowness and hollowing out of the Republican Party and the MAGA Party, that they would even think to do this, to try to discredit the hard work and courage of the Jan6 Committee, led by a vice chairman that was part of their party, that they, of course, eventually admonished and censured, in Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. It sullies the name of those that died on that hill, literally on Capitol Hill, including Metro Police and Capitol Police and others, and those that still suffer from the psychological scars of what was one of the Capitol Police referred to as reminiscent of her time in Fallujah. And she said particularly the blood-splattered steps of the Capitol. For those that now say, with revisionist history and some sort of rose-colored glasses, that this was effectively just a Capitol tour gone awry, and there's just hours and hours of people doing nothing or peaceful, right? So don't focus on that. Focus on the bloody combat, medieval style, at the West Terrace and at the stairs, and the battle that raged for the soul of our democracy against an outmatched Capitol and Metro Police, not reinforced by the National Guard, because who was going to call them out? The president certainly wasn't at the time going to do that, or anybody else. And And then when the line wouldn't hold, that now chilling comment from one of the Capitol Police, the line is not holding, meaning this teeming band of insurrectionists were going to start pouring in and did pour into the Capitol with murderous cries, right? And with bent on assassination. I don't want to even think what would have happened had this fomented mob whipped up by Donald Trump, armed, many of them armed, despite what some of these sponsors of this resolution said, had actually gotten their hands on a staffer or an elected official. God forbid Nancy Pelosi, God forbid the rest of them. They're all big talkers, and we've seen that in their trials, their convictions, and their sentencings, when they went from big talkers with their GoPros and their wrapped in American flags and saying they're going to, where's Nancy, and let's hang Nancy and drag her out by her hair and all that, and then they're all blubbering idiots begging for mercy when it's time to meet their maker in the form of a federal judge. So I don't really know what they would have done had they actually done it, but pushed on with a mob mentality, I can imagine the violence that could have ensued and the grievous harm that would have come to members of Congress. And not only members of Congress, I felt sorry for the poor staff members. They're making like minimum wage, okay? And they're crawling on their belly to try to get to safety while, 15 or 20 Capitol Police outmatched trying to distract them from hanging elected officials. And to watch this group of people, starting with Mitch McConnell all the way to this group here that sponsored this resolution, when they were in it, like your colleague on the podcast, at the moment, and they were looking down the barrel of an angry mob with murderous cries, they certainly sung a different tune, including on the Congress floor. Go back and watch Mitch McConnell talking about Donald Trump and how terrible it was. You'd think the guy would never be elected. And now all those same people, including one of the sponsors of this resolution, is now saying, well, it wasn't an insurrection, and no, there wasn't a violent, no, it wasn't an attack on the temple of our democracy. No, it's too partisan. When did an attack on our Capitol become partisan? It is partisan by one wing in particular. Welcome back. Now you know why we call it Legal AF, and if you didn't, tune in on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and you will. Right here on this YouTube channel. You knew that. You're already here. Free subscribe and help get to 3 million. Help us get to 3 million free subscribers. And then you can pick up the Legal AF podcast, full-length version with 4 or 5 curated stories at the intersection of law and politics we've chosen just for you on all major podcast platforms. If you know about Legal AF, maybe you missed the show, there's a segment, or you know all about the show, but you want to get friends, family, people in your life to know more about us, send that bite-sized version of Legal AF to somebody in your life and ask them to become part of our audience. We really would appreciate you helping us out like that, and that you're already a supporter. If you don't know who I am or what I'm talking about, that was Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok. We do it on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the MeidasTouch network. And then the leaders of Legal AF do hot takes about every hour at that same intersection. No censorship. Nobody censors me. Nobody tells me what to say or my co-anchors. And we don't blow smoke or sunshine. So if you're not already a part of our audience, we invite you to join us Wednesdays, Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I'm Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.